Austin O'Brien, or Axel Brody in the dub, is another one of the 4 students from other academies introduced in Season 3 of GX. He's from West Academy, and he's a goddamn dual mercenary. How cool is that? A duelist and a mercenary. Having the power to duel fools into submission with his volcanic burn deck, or actually burn people in creative ways. Sounds like an amazing dual career to have. Hell, his freaking dual disc is a freaking gun. That's seriously badass. Even if it can shoot out only cards, so it's basically a Nerf gun that dishes out paper cuts, but that's still badass. Why would anyone not want this guy in Duel Links? Anyways, here's how I think Austin O'Brien should come to Duel Links. So building off my last video on Amon Garam / Adrian Gecko, which you should totally check out, so here's a link to that video. I'll use the same preemptive world building concept from there. The TLDR for that being that I want to have a Duelist Chronicle 3 event for GX to introduce us to the new students and have all the dual band duels against the new students be duel events. Unfortunately, in time of me actually coming out with this video, they've already made a Duelist Chronicle 3, which kind of briefly showed you the 4 new students and stuff like that, but you don't get to duel them or do anything like that. So, in any case, I'll still have a video coming back to this concept sometime in the near future, so stay tuned for that. After that, I wanted to have the rest of Season 3 be done in individual events like I did one already for Adrian Gecko, with each student getting their own event to unlock them, culminating in a big event that, again, I'll also make a video on eventually. For O'Brien's events, we'll have another gate event similar to Amon / Adrian, and spoiler alerts, so will the other students once I get to them, most likely. I just feel like gate events are the best for character unlocks, since I feel it gives you the most sort of exposure to these characters and to these new duelists as opposed to other events hypes, for example the roaming duelist ones where you kind of only just face them really quickly and you don't really get to learn much. Of course, they have fixed this in later versions of this event where they do have a little bit of story attached to them. But in any case, for this event, the item you collect can be, I don't know, bullets, dual disc bullets, flaming Yu-Gi-Oh card dual disc bullets, I don't know, something like that. Something around those lines, I guess. To add a little extra to this event, I wanted to have a level 50 and maybe even a level 60 O'Brien appear from time to time with a new match stipulation, a survival duel. In these duels, you'll face off against O'Brien twice or thrice in a row while retaining your LP count throughout each duel. So for example, in your first duel, if you beat O'Brien and you only have 1,000 life points left, in your next duel with O'Brien, you'll start with those 1,000 life points again. I know consecutive duels isn't something that has really been done in Duel Links yet, and the whole sort of life points carrying over between duels has only really been done in the Duel Tower events. However, I don't envision this being that hard to implement, if I'm being honest with you, and feel it's the truest way to make an event that encapsulates O'Brien's character. You know, being raised by his dad to survive against all odds and living his life as a badass fucking mercenary. Although I admit it is going to be kind of annoying having to duel 2 or 3 times in a row just to get 1 ring. But O'Brien's badass, so I think it'll be okay. My only issue with this is having O'Brien being the opponent for all 2 or 3 duels, so maybe we can have some sort of mercenary NPC lackey that you duel first, and then you face O'Brien at the end. It just seemed kind of weird to me to have you beat O'Brien just for him to literally get right back up and be like, okay, let's do it again, immediately after you destroy him with, you know, your auto duel deck or whatever the case may be. And maybe to balance this duel, the player can start with more LP than usual at the cost of more of the duel event item to make things easier, since these guys are obviously going to inflict a lot of effect damage, since that's the main theme of O'Brien's deck. Or we can even do something vice versa, where using the dual events item, if you use more of them, you can decrease your starting LP to make the events even harder for you, but greatly increase the drops, or maybe the rarity of certain drops for this duel. You can really let the player sort of play around with this risk versus reward factor in this event, and I think that'll make it a lot more interesting than most of the basic gate events. Similar to Amon, we already have a good amount of the Volcanic cards, O'Brien's Dex archetype, in Duel Links. But we have a few missing, so we can go ahead and give those out here in the event drops. The only issue I have with any of O'Brien's cards is that they focus on burn damage, which is a mechanic y'all love to abuse and ruin things with, like Flight in some of the other card games, or my feelings when you watch my videos and decide not to subscribe. This abuse stings even more in Duel Links with, smaller decks and LP counts. That being said, here's what I think O'Brien can drop when you beat him. So I try to make sure we got access to all the Volcanic cards first, which isn't too hard considering there's only like 14 of them and we're only missing about 5 of them. I know Duel Links tends to try and do at the very least 2 events for their unlocks, so if you miss the first one you get a second chance to unlock this character. If not, you can unlock them at the gate once they get released, and they tend to vary the drops for the events in both of these events. And I know that's some sort of an aspect I haven't really picked up on, but we'll see if maybe I can edit that in future videos. But in any case, this sort of explains why I added in Volcanic Slicer, Wildfire, Blaze Accelerator Reload, Volcanic Counter, and Volcanic Scattershot as his drop rewards. Reversal already have Volcanic Rat, but for some reason I always have the hardest time deciding what the normal rarity cards are to give out in these events, so Crappy Chunky Rat reprint it is. For the rest of his normal rarities, I went with Ultimate Baseball Kid and Firewall. Firewall works pretty well with O'Brien's playstyle since he sends a bunch of prior monsters to the graveyard in order to trigger effects. Having to remove them from play, paying 500 life points and all that just to negate an attack isn't at all worth it, but I think it's definitely something that has good synergy with O'Brien and his Volcanics. Ultimate Baseball Kid is a fire monster that inflicts burn damage and is a bit of a throwback as it's a pretty old card, so I figured why not. Around those same lines, we have Inferno, which I was shocked to find out isn't in Duel Links at the time of me writing this. It's pretty shocking considering how much of an old and basic card it is. And considering that if you were to release it at this point in the game, it's kind of sort of power crept to the point where it's essentially garbage. And finally, we have as the final card here, Cataclysmic Scorching Sunburner, which is a card I actually only just heard about and found out while looking up potential cards for this section, so I figured he would fit right in. For his level 30 deck, I decided to go with something a little bit less volcanic, a little bit more just fire-based, and a little more simpler. So we've got 3 copies of Inferno, 3 copies of Fire Trooper, 3 copies of Gaia Soul, the Combustible Collective, 3 copies of Volcanic Slicer. I said a little less, I didn't say completely none. And we're gonna round up our monsters with 3 copies of Ultimate Baseball Kid here. We're gonna throw in 2 copies of Kickfire, and as well as 2 copies of Backfire, and finally 1 copy of Firewall. I kind of just threw together a quick fire beatdown deck, nothing too special here. For his level 40, I went with sort of a pure Volcanic deck here. We've got Volcanic Doomfire at 1, Volcanic Queen at 1, Volcanic Slicer at 2, Volcanic Shell at 3, Volcanic Scattershot at 3, Volcanic Hammer at 1, Volcanic Rocket at 3, Blaze Accelerator at 3, Tri-Blaze Accelerator at 2, Wildfire, and a single copy of Firewall as well. His higher level decks can kind of just be the same deck, but with the Fire Starter ability active. More about that on the next section, and you can maybe swap out some of the accelerators from some defensive traps at that point, but you kind of get the main idea. Volcanics aren't really that great, but I think they can really thrive in Duel Links with the use of some skills. In fact, they might even be too good with the small deck size and the small amount of life points, if I'm being honest. His key card is obviously gonna have to be Volcanic Doomfire, as that's his key card in the series. I really hate that this is yet again another key card that has already been released in Duel Links as an ultra rare in a box, but Volcanic Doomfire really has to be O'Brien's key card. It's the boss monster for Volcanics, and it's the main card that his deck tries to get out. It's really a no-brainer here. Now, for O'Brien's skills, I wanted to go a bit more wild with these skills since O'Brien is one of the few duelists, or at least one of the few duelists that is sort of a main or a more important character that isn't just a one-off in a couple of episodes in the Yu-Gi-Oh series who actually focuses on effect damage. So I tried to the best of my ability to make this sort of balanced, but also give Volcanics a bit of an edge in Duel Links. So the first custom ability we've got here is Firestarter. And this simply just allows you to begin the duel with Blaze Accelerator on the field. This will give Volcanics a bit of an edge since it will free up their deck for more prior monsters as they won't need to add this card or search it out, and they'll just have it straight up from the beginning with this skill. Being able to destroy a monster and do some burn damage from turn 1 might sound like a bit much, but I think by the time this video, or rather this skill would come out, theoretically, the Duel Links meta will be able to handle it. The next skill is going to be Inferno Starter. Begin the duel with Tri-Blaze Accelerator on the field, but begin the duel with only 2 cards in your starting hand. Likewise, this would help out Volcanics, but since you need this to summon Volcanic Doomfire, I had to add this small hand restriction for balance. Summoning Volcanic Doomfire first turn would be pretty annoying every ranked duel, no matter where the meta is, I think. Volcanic Surge can only be activated once per turn if you have inflicted effect damage to your opponent. Increase the attack of all of your face-up fire attribute or pyro type monsters you control by 400. You know, I always have to give some sort of weird attacking boost skill that no one's ever going to use. It's kind of what Konami's going to do anyway, so yeah. Flame of Kings. Begin the duel with Fire King Island on the field. Right now in Duel Links, the only other fire archetypes are Fire Kings and Hazy Beast. I figured you could run some Fire Kings with O'Brien and maybe not have to worry so much about Yubel decks making a return, since Yubel decks are only really good with the Yubel skill, not so much just with Fire King Island. But, you know, I could be wrong. Go ahead and prove me wrong, you freaking scum of the earth that decided to play Yubel decks every ranked season or every meta, even if it doesn't work out. So you can just watch us both as we just fucking sit around for like 20 turns, unable to do anything, just so that your dumbass, twin-headed, no attack having titty dragon destroys all the monsters on the field every turn. Parting Shot can only be used if your opponent has more than 200 life points. During your draw phase, instead of drawing a card, inflict 200 points of effect damage to your opponent. So for this skill, I was kind of inspired by that crappy draw pass skill that obviously no one uses because it's garbage and there's really no use for it. I wanted a skill that does effect damage, you know, once per turn, but also can't be abused to the point where you can just kind of stall out and only use that skill to win. So that's why I made it so you literally cannot beat your opponent with this skill. But I'm sure now that I think about it, that's still not going to be enough of a restriction, to be honest, since y'all love finding a way around that somehow. I might have to add some other kind of restriction where if your opponent's life points are less than 1,000 or something like that, or maybe 1,500, you also cannot use any sort of effect damage at all. Is probably a better way to balance this out. So for O'Brien's level up awards, for his level 3, 10, 16, we're going to go ahead and give a copy of Volcanic Shell. For levels 7, 11, and 21, we're going to go ahead and give out a copy of Blaze Accelerator. For 14, 18, 23, we're going to give out a copy of Haze Flame Griffin. Levels 25, 33, and 38, we're going to give out another copy of Volcanic Slicer. Levels 30 and 40, we'll give out Fire Trooper. Level 45, we'll give out a single copy of Volcanic Queen. And as for his skill drops in his level ups, we're going to go with level 4 being Volcanic Surge, level 15 being Firestarter, and level 20 being Reload. The only things really worth mentioning are Hazy Flame Griffin, who I kind of just threw in there because I ran out of Volcanic cards and don't think it would make sense to give out any other cards that Konami wants you to buy packs for. Fire Trooper 2 might sound like much when it comes to effect damage, but I think having only access to 2 of them will be okay in Duel Links, but like I said before, go ahead and prove me wrong, you horrible, horrible scum of the Earth Weevil players. And finally, Volcanic Queen at 1, since I can't stand Lava Golem still, and I can't stand the thought of you guys practically having a 4th Lava Golem. So what do you think? Did I do the badass that is O'Brien justice? Or do you think I should gone a different way with this? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, stay fresh.